Evening, members. It is 7 o'clock, so welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start, I will read out the webcasting introduction. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by entering the conference room and using the seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. And if there are any technical problems this evening, it may be necessary to adjourn the meeting, hopefully just for a short time, but hopefully we won't have any technical problems. So, moving on, any apologies for absence?
I've received apologies from Councillors Baldwin, Matthews, Plummer and Stalker.
Thank you. And any substitute members?
None, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, the minutes of the last two meetings, the 3rd of June and the 8th of June. To confirm those minutes, first of all, I'll just ask the question, anything on the meeting from the 3rd of June? No. And anything from the 8th of June? Councillor Wixley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A few things actually. On page 20, the last paragraph, there's reference to comments which I made. I think the first thing I would say, on the fourth line down, it doesn't actually make good sense the way it's written. I won't read it all out, but it goes on developments as ward councillor and for residents. Well, I think the and for residents bit could be deleted because the sentence doesn't make too much sense as it's written. That's one thing. The next thing, which I was quite surprised when I saw this, said a press release would have been helpful to avoid any misunderstandings. That certainly wasn't a comment I made, and I've actually viewed the webcasting before coming here tonight. I actually think that sentence could be deleted as well, because what it referred to was that I mentioned that a resident had been informed about the development of the Pearls Lane nursery via a press release. Well, that's what I actually said. So it wasn't a question that a press release would be helpful to avoid any misunderstandings. There was a misunderstanding in what's written there. So I think that could be deleted. And in fact, further information supplied to me by Councillor Murray suggests that there wasn't a press release at all anyway. So I think that misunderstanding came about through what somebody had picked up on everything Epping Forest. So it was a press article, as I think there's some confusion. But I think that sentence could be usefully deleted without any problems at all. And just another point on the next page, page 21. I think it's 2, 4, 6. I think it's a 6th line down. Is reference to me referring final judgment for such a meeting. Well, what I was referring to, I think if the word planning could be added there, planning meeting, because I was quite conscious of avoiding fettering my discretion. So I just wanted to be sure that the sort of meeting I was referring to was in fact a planning meeting.
Thank you for that. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 25, it says that I was talking about the Epping High Street. It should be Epping Town Centres. The Epping High Street consultation was a different project altogether. So if that could be changed to Epping Town Centres, please, or centre.
So that's the
it's first... it's part of the Town Centres project that I was referring to.
No, you're referring to the first paragraph that starts, Councillor J.H. Whitehouse was concerned?
Yes, yes, thank you.
So you'd say that High Street should read
Epping Town Centre project or whatever.
Any other comments or anything? In that case, if members are happy to confirm the meetings with those few amendments. Agreed? Thank you. Item number 5, declarations of interest. Councillor Bassett. Just one moment while the microphone.
How about that? All right. Declare a possible pecuniary interest in the item on business plan for Qualis, being a non-executive director and did have input into the plan, and I shall leave the meeting for that.
Thank you for that. Any other declarations? No. So we now move on to public questions and requests to address the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We have had one public question submitted. The question has come from a resident of Epping who is not able to be present this evening. So I will read out the question. I also have the answer. I'm not sure whether I will read the answer as well. Yes? Yeah, thank you. So he actually sent in 2 questions. The first one was in 2 parts. As the reported expenditure, is referring to the Qualis finance report. As the reported expenditure is higher and income generally significantly less than expected, do you envisage any problems with meeting deadline dates covering the costs associated with interest loan repayments? And the second part was 6 months ago, Qualis News released a statement advising that a new community interest company was agreed and would form a partnership with specialists Primera Corporation. The only acknowledgement of this new company setup I could see in this latest report shows that £3,000 was spent on setup costs, £6,000 paid to Primera, and £1,000 on other. The answer that I have been supplied with on that...
Sorry to interrupt, Chairman. Shouldn't that be £10,000 on other?
Sorry, yes, apologies, yes, it's an auto. £10,000 on other. The answer that I've been provided with is that Qualis has paid interest and principal on loans to date and envisages no issue with continuing to make these payments. Income from Qualis Management and Qualis Group is as expected. Qualis living income is lower than forecast. Expenditure is also lower, which improves the position. Qualis Commercial is not expecting any income this year as per the financial plan. On the second part of question 1, the fee agreed with regeneration specialist Primera for supporting the setup of the community interest company, full stakeholder consultation, identifying focus areas, and the initial costs was £13,000. There has been no additional expenditure associated with the CIC to date, apart from relatively small costs associated with registering the company. The CIC is fully supported by the group and does not currently have any employees. Costs associated with support will be recharged to the CIC, which is the most efficient approach during the setup phase. The CIC will require seed money to get started in October 2021, and we are currently exploring funding options for the initial projects. And it's suggested that Mr. Foy looks at the 4-year 2021-2025 business plan for additional information. His second question was asking that could Qualis kindly give a couple of examples of what the £10,000 other has been spent on and a summarised progress report on the partnership with Primera. At this point in time, Qualis haven't provided an answer to that question, saying that they weren't sure which part of the business plan the questioner was referring to, and also that they would need further time to look into it. So I would ask that when the answer is supplied by Qualis, that it be added to the minutes, but obviously also written answers to these questions will be sent direct to Mr. Foy. Thank you very much. Obviously, under normal circumstances, if the questioner were present, he would be given the opportunity to ask any supplementary questions, but as things stand, as he is not here this evening, we leave it at the answers that I've been provided with. Thank you very much. We've had no request to address the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I believe. No. And we have no executive decision call-ins. So we move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is on pages 29 to 80, the Qualis 4-year business plan for 2021-22 to 2024-25. And as a committee, we're being asked to consider the plan and to make any comments that we might wish Cabinet to reflect upon when they receive this report at their meeting on the 12th of July. So if I could just pass over to Mr. Small in the first instance, just to set the scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'm just going to introduce the item, and as then you say, I'll probably hand over to Sasha Jevons and the portfolio holder as well to actually talk about it in more detail. As members will be aware, the 4-year business plan is the primary tool that the Council has to control the activities of Qualis. So it's a requirement of the shareholder agreement that Qualis must produce a 4-year business plan every year and a 1-year business plan as well. 4-year business plan setting out strategic direction for Qualis, and the 1-year plan setting out more activities that will take place in the current year. The 1-year plan was presented to Cabinet and Council back in December, I think it was last year. But at that point, Qualis wanted a bit more time to think about the longer term direction for the business. And as they just had appointed a new board at that point in time, they wanted the board to be engaged in that process. So after some work together with the Council's officers and the officers of Qualis, this report presents the 4-year business plan that's been produced. This is the Council's opportunity to make comments upon the direction that's being set within that business plan, and if they want to change the objectives or to comment and contribute towards the objectives as well. The report itself, the cover report, is quite detailed and sets out all of the activities that are proposed within the business plan and provides some commentary on those as well. It considers the risks to the Council, and it sets out the recommendations or the requests that are included within the Qualis business plan, and these are presented within the report itself. There are some discussion about future service transfers, and attached as Appendix B, I think it is, to the report, there's a template that the Council might wish to follow, broadly at least, in terms of how it puts business cases together for future consideration. So, as the Chair says, that the report asks the Scrutiny Committee to consider the business plan and to make any comments that they'd like to pass on to Cabinet, that Cabinet should consider when Cabinet considers the report on the 12th of July. The views of this meeting will be captured and passed on to Cabinet for their consideration. And at that point, Chair, I'll hand over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Small. And if I can first of all just go to the portfolio holder, Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for taking a look at this very detailed report and business plan. I think it's fair to put the context first of where we are with Qualis. We have set up Qualis. It is going to be there. We want, perhaps even stronger, that we need Qualis to be a success for this council. We want to make sure that when Qualis are doing things, they're doing things that we as a council want them to do. And that's been the way that we've worked this one. We've given direction for Qualis to look at various things. They've taken their view on it. They are a separate company, primarily a development and facilities management company, doing stuff that will be done in each case, I would hope, significantly better than we can actually achieve as a council doing things, because they can work in the commercial environment. I'm certainly here to listen to all the input that we get this evening, to take that forward to when we discuss this at Cabinet. I think if I can encourage members to be as positively proactive on this as possible, I don't believe that anyone's plans are ever 100% accurate, and will, if I know from my own work, if I get a plan that's for 6 months, we actually manage to do roughly what we said, and that's pretty good going. This is looking out 4 years. I fully expect each year, as they come back with the 1-year business plan, the 4-year business plan, we will see tweaks and changes. I think a lot of what we've got in here is very useful in that it sets out indicative directions that we're going to look at. I think we've got a good balance as well of looking at things that need to be done and doing things from an exploratory point of view, so that we actually see whether what we think we want to do is actually going to be things that we want to do. I think that's one of the things I would pull out most strongly from this report. Look at what we're suggesting that we do, looking at the steps we're going to do to, and Qualis is going to do to make sure that we get the returns and bonuses that we expect from doing it that way, and recognise the fact that some of these may well get looked at, and when they get looked at and we actually get the bottom line data to it, we may come back and say, actually, that's not such a good idea after all, we need to do something different. And obviously when we do, with the next year's 1-year business plan and 4-year business plan, we'll be coming back to scrutiny so we can talk you through it. But as I've done on previous occasions when we've got things that are sufficiently important, I do want to hear what people have to say. I will try and answer as many questions from the council side of Qualis as I can, but obviously we have Sasha here as the Managing Director of Qualis, who will go into some more of the detail of what we're doing, and if there's detailed technical questions about the business plan, then I shall be handing it over to the Qualis team to answer, because you don't necessarily want to hear my view on what they think is the case. It's better to hear it from them. So with your permission, Chairman, I shall hand over to Sasha.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillip. So yes, Sasha Jevons as the Chief Executive Officer? Managing Director, sorry, get the terminology right. If I can hand over to you, and I understand you're going to give a short presentation. Can I just also, I'm conscious that we've got other members of the other directors on the Zoom screens. I just wonder if you want to introduce them as well at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the team this evening that are on the screen joining by Zoom, we have our Group Operations Director, Paul Hewitt, Managing Director of Qualis Commercial, Simon Rutter, and Managing Director of Qualis Management, Ben Johnson. So they join us by Zoom tonight. So I'd just like to start by just recapping on the purpose of Qualis. So Qualis is the council's property company. It operates to generate returns that support the key services of the council and regeneration activities. So the company's core activities are focused specifically on development, on investment, on property asset management and facilities management. And that's where the focus is. And that's the team and the experience that we've been building in Qualis over the last year to 2 years. So the 4-year plan sets out the detailed objectives in each of the subsidiary companies, of which there are 4. And so the detail is set out within the plan. Nick Dorr is going to cover some of the financial plan this evening. So to give you an overview of the sort of headlines of what the 4-year plan aims to deliver, and that is to deliver the Epping development sites, so 270 residential homes, the car park, and enable the council's development of the sports centre. 28 homes at Round Hills. Continue to explore investment and regeneration opportunities across the district. To continue to build on the commercial investment portfolio, and Qualis has already achieved a 30 million commercial investment portfolio, delivering a good return across 3 assets. To consider the benefits of transferring additional services from the council, and what I would say is we are only looking at working with the council on services that make sense to Qualis management in the context of property. So those services that we will explore and consider with the council are asset management, grounds maintenance, facilities management, and housing contracts, so only related to property. And then finally, work with the community on developing Qualis community and looking at opportunities around employment, sustainability and community projects. And we need to take that a step further by starting to understand that company, define the projects that will work alongside the other activities of the group. So I'm going to stop there. That just gives you a sort of high-level overview of the 4-year plan. And I'm just going to hand over to Nick Dorr just to give a few words on the financial elements, and then probably take questions.
So just some summary points. Qualis Management, the service company, will generate 6% return, which was its targeted return within the next 4 years. Qualis Commercial, in terms of development income, will be returning significant development income from the year after next. Qualis Living, in terms of investing in investment assets, is returning a healthy profit that grows from 8.5% to more significant amounts over the period. And we're also suggesting that a small further loan is required so that further developments can take place worth 35 million. I think I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I think you were offering to take questions at this stage, so Councillor Rackham.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's very comprehensive. Just on a typing error, first of all, on 4.2, it says in recent years many councils have building portfolios. I think that should be been, perhaps. My first question is regarding on the key priorities identified by Qualis, establishing a fit-for-purpose internal property asset management function. How much money do you envisage that saving the District Council? That's question number one. And question number two is on page 43, regarding the sites of Round Hills and Epping Town Centre. That seemed just like a small amount of sites for 4 years. I wondered if you had any more in the pipeline that you're going to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rackham. That first question is exactly the reason why in this 4-year business plan we say we're putting the asset management team there together with Qualis to actually do the necessary work on that business plan to see what that number actually might be. And clearly then when we come back with that, we'll be able to see whether we think that the savings, or I tend to prefer to look at it more rather than savings, actually look at the improved revenue generation. It's two sides of the same coin, I know, but the key here is not just to cut costs out of things, it's actually to make more money. And if the business case comes back after doing the work on it and looking at the portfolio and the costs of managing it, it comes back and it says, we can save you 50,000, I will probably say, thanks, but no thanks. If they come back and say, we think that there's these opportunities to make this much additional revenue for you over the coming years, particularly given that we know that the next couple of years at least are going to be really, really tight. We thought it was bad for the budget this year. It's going to be so much worse next year, says he cheerfully. That's my first reference to next year's budget being difficult. But if they come back and show how they expect to be able to help us in that way, then that's what I would be bringing back. So we can't answer that question yet until we've done the work.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair. First one's quite trivial, but reasonably important. Page 11 of the report mentions health and safety. Yeah, the whole of this report is printed in a light grey characters, which is almost impossible to read on PCs. I don't use paper because I'm hopefully green, but I really struggled with this, and it costs nothing to change to black. It might be very stylish, but not practical at all. Second point, more serious. Over the 4-year plan, it seems we're not taking any dividend, and that dividend is being ploughed back into Qualis to act as a buffer. which is fine. Now, is there any way back for us to draw some sort of dividend if we get into a situation where we require the money to maintain our services?
Thank you. Councillor Phillip, yes.
Thank you. I'll leave the question around grey print to Qualis, since it's their business plan. The plan at this stage is to keep those profits as they're generated within Qualis, because that will allow Qualis to be set up to succeed. At the moment, they're very highly geared. They're borrowing from us. They've got stuff in the planning systems. It's not even work in progress yet. We want Qualis to be successful. That will involve them reinvesting in the business. As I said at the beginning, this is a 4-year business plan. I would hope that from a council point of view, myself and Mr. Small will have more than a few months realising that we've got a problem that needs to be filled, and at that point we can say in the subsequent years we need to change the direction of the business plan to give more immediate support back into the council. I genuinely hope we don't get there, because the best thing that we can do is give Qualis the ability to grow and be more successful. But we are the shareholder. If we need to start looking at getting money back in a different way, then that is always an option. But looking at this point for the next 4 years, we don't think that we're going to need it. If things change, then things change.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 of the questions are fairly detailed and I probably won't be able to answer tonight, so I'd welcome an answer by email and in the bulletin. Obviously, the money that Qualis brings into the council is very important, but I particularly want to know about the quality of the service that Qualis are providing when we transfer services, and particularly, for example, the voids, to know how long Qualis are taking to do voids and what the budget is. This used to come to Housing Scrutiny Committee regularly, so we could keep an eye on voids. Is this sort of level of detail going to be accessible to us in the future, now, once services are under Qualis rather than under the council? I'm also interested in the sort of repairs that Qualis doesn't have the expertise to do. Let's take entry phones as an example. Presumably, that would have to be outsourced. Would be interested to know how many repairs have had to be outsourced, and if Qualis is doing that themselves and it's coming from their budget, or if they're passing it back to the council and is obviously then going to come out of the council budget. On a slightly different point, there's a possibility, talks about management services being transferred, and I assume that's the housing, council houses and so on, the management of that is being proposed as a possible transfer. I'm just wondering what consultation is going to be done with the tenants, because years ago the government was very keen that we got rid of our tenants and had arm's length companies. We consulted 3 times with the tenants and they all wanted to stay every time with the council. So what consultation is going to be carried out with the tenants before we start looking at business plans to move it? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phillip, yes?
Yes, thank you, and I will hand most of that across to Sasha. There's a couple of things I want to state for a start. Firstly, the name of the company is Qualis. It's pronounced Qualis. So let's get this right, because it irritates me no end to hear people mispronouncing it. So it's Qualis. There are no plans in this 4-year business plan to hand our housing stock across to be Qualis's rather than ours. There's nothing in there. It's management of things, which is in the same way as we did with the housing repairs previously. We had another company taking in charge of the management of it. The fact that we've now chosen Qualis to do that doesn't affect our ability to scrutinise things. And I think this has been brought up before, and I think it was committed that our select panel would actually look at the ability of Qualis to do the repairs and the quality that we're getting. Clearly, as we go forward through the scrutiny process, if there are things that need to be looked at in terms of how the council is delivering the service, and by that I mean the council delivering the service through its outsourced supplier Qualis, then we can look at that from a scrutiny point of view. So I don't see doing things in Qualis as removing the ability to scrutinise the fact that we are delivering the right thing for our residents and for our occupiers. But in terms of the detail part, I think I'll hand over that to Sasha.
Can I ask actually Ben Johnson to answer the detail on the KPIs that we collect in Qualis Management and the voids point and responsive versus subcontractors thing?
Thank you, Sasha. So just picking up on these... Oh, so I'm getting a feedback there. Sorry, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So in terms of the outsourcing, so what we are looking at is building the capability in-house as much as possible. So over the course of the business plan, we will look at where it makes sense to do so, to bring more work in-house, where we can then make savings and of course then pass that on to the shareholder. So that's certainly something that we will be exploring. In terms of performance, so that is monitored on a monthly basis. So in terms of the void side, we reported to last quarter to our board. So I think we're running at around 23 days average across all void types at the moment. So that was as of quarter two within our board reporting mechanism. But we've got a number of high-level KPIs which are reporting to the board, which also then is passed on to the shareholder.
Thank you for that. Councillor Barnott.
It's not switching on. Sorry. Could you maybe come back to me?
Yes, of course. Yes, I'll go to Councillor Murray and then come back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I won't go over old ground because we are where we are as regards Qualis. I share some of, well, in fact, all of Councillor Whitehouse's concerns, and I'm not sure I was particularly satisfied with the reply, but we'll leave that there. But I wouldn't want a hare to start running. I thought the portfolio holder was very precise in his answer. And maybe I've misconstrued his answer. His answer about a possible transfer of the housing stock and consultation with tenants was that it's not in this 4-year business plan. Well, that could be just a factual answer, or it could be, well, that's obviously being considered, but it isn't at the moment in this 4-year business plan. So that we don't set any hares running tonight, would I be right in interpreting his answer as purely a factual answer? It is not in this 4-year business plan, and we can't therefore imply from that it's even been considered in the next business plan. And then I have other issues.
Right. Councillor Phillips, that one first.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's be really as clear as I possibly can be. There have been no discussions whatsoever about any possibility of moving our housing stock to Qualis. It's not something that we've discussed as a cabinet as being a good idea. There are no plans to change the status quo in this 4-year business plan, or as far as the cabinet has looked at in terms of asking Qualis to look at it. And until the cabinet decided it was something that we wanted Qualis to look at, then Qualis aren't going to look at it. So it's not something they've got an option to look at. It's not something we're asking them to look at. It's not something we're planning to do it. We're very proud of our record in terms of building new council houses. We're going to continue building new council houses. And if Councillor Holly Whitbread was here tonight, she would no doubt tell us how many hundreds they're planning to do over the coming years. There's no plans to make that go anywhere else than stay in the council.
Thank you. I think that was important that the portfolio holder had the opportunity to absolutely clarify that, and I'm really pleased to hear that. I did just have one area that I wanted to explore tonight, and that was on page 66 of the report, Qualis Community, because I thought of all of the reports, and it may be for obvious reasons in terms of timing and where they are, this was the sketchiest of the element of the report. So, I mean, is that merely an accurate summary of where you are at the moment, or can you give us any more information as regards where you are in terms of Qualis community and so on? Because I did think that was extremely light touch.
Sasha, if I can go to you.
It is in part where we're at. We've only recently registered Qualis community. We've been focusing on the Epping developments and the setup of the business. But I'm going to go to Paul Hewitt, actually, because I think Paul can give a bit more detail about where we've got to date and also what we're looking at over the coming months and year.
Thank you, Sasha. As Sasha said, the community interest company was very recently established. We have appointed a regeneration specialist, Primera, to help us with the setup of that company, and that is ongoing. We originally had a 3-month setup period, but that had to stop for the election period. But we've made some really good progress through stakeholder engagement. So that's a mixture of officers and different community groups, parish and town councils. So we're having lots and lots of conversations at the moment. We're finding that there are many opportunities for us to have a positive impact across the district. But the business plan had to be set reasonably vague because we can't commit to projects at this stage, and we want to complete our consultation process. But we're quite excited about what the community interest company can do, and we want it to complement other activities that are being done by both the council and existing community groups, and hopefully we can work in partnership. We have identified that some of the key areas are around training and employment, particularly for young people, and we are developing our ideas in that area. There have been discussions about business improvement districts or community improvement districts and setting something up across the district or in certain parts of. So there is a lot more work to be done. We intend to present a business plan for the community interest company to the Qualis Group Board in July, and then that will flow through the council process afterwards. And you'll obviously then see a lot more detail.
Thank you for that. Can I just ask, you talked about employment and training. Have you considered retraining for older people who may have lost their jobs through the pandemic period?
We're very open-minded as to where the focus is on training and employment. It's really the feedback that we've had. A lot of members of the community have suggested that young people were an area of concern, or that should be something we should look at. So we're talking about work experience, apprenticeships, and that sort of thing. But certainly, any unemployment across the district, we will try and design programs and activities that will help reduce that and to get people back to work.
Thank you for that. Councillor Whitbread, did you want to come in on this particular point, or was it something more general?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, it's more general, and it actually harks back to something that Councillor Phillips said a short time ago. And I think it's really important that we get clarity around questions like what Councillor Whitehouse asked and what Councillor Murray backed up, because there have been no discussions around council houses and transfers. But one of the big problems that we've had during the formulation of Qualis, and Qualis is something that we really need to do as a council, and if anything, we're behind the curve, we're not ahead of the curve, other councils are well ahead of us. But some people have tried to confuse residents and mislead residents. And let me read you something. I'm not going to name the councillor that's mentioned on Facebook, but a number of accusations about the board members of Qualis, and it's time to be clear about this, and I'd like a comment on it. A number of comments have been made around board members and the involvement of board members. Indeed, my own company has been accused of being a shareholder in Qualis. And obviously that's just completely not true. But this is on Facebook, and it's been this week. It's in the past couple of days. And I won't name the councillor, but it is an Epping councillor, and they are in the room this evening. I don't claim to be a genius investigator, just making EFDC residents aware of how corrupted our councillors are. I recently met with a councillor, I won't name them, who informed me of the whole Qualis setup. So we have councillors going around potting out statements that actually make Qualis look a little bit awkward. And therefore, I think we need to be very clear about the role of board members and the makeup of the board on Qualis, because no member of this council benefits from Qualis. It's our residents who will benefit from Qualis. But I just think it's time to be clear and start clearing up some of this rubbish that's been spoken about on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitbread. Councillor Murray, did you have another?
No, I don't think so, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitehouse, is this something relating to particularly this? Because I have got others on the list.
Yes,
as
Chairman.
well.
I just want to come back on what Councillor Whitbread said, because he did link it to my question. Just want to make it perfectly clear it wasn't me who wrote that, because I don't write on Facebook. But it could be misinterpreted as it was linked to my question.
Right, I think that has been noted. Councillor Whitbread, do you want to just...
I feel I need to come back. I haven't actually named any councillor in it. I've not linked it to a councillor. Obviously, it's not the councillor who's written on Facebook. It's the advice they've given to a resident. And we know there was lots of statements along those lines made, especially during the recent election campaign, and a lot of confusing of residents deliberately.
Thank you for both those comments, and I think, hopefully the minutes will be clear in the way in which that is put together. Councillor Barnett, you're okay now?
Yeah, sorry about that. Firstly, I'd just like to congratulate those that have put this together. I think it's ambitious, aspirational, and I think there's a real commitment to avoid duplication of work, which I think's very much welcomed. I have three points on risk and 2 points on structure and HR. Perhaps if I read out my questions, and then whatever can be answered, great. Whatever may need to be deferred to email, then so be it. Is that okay? I will refer to the paragraph. So the first is in relation to paragraphs 4.4 and 4.5. I think there's no question that Qualis investments bring in income, rental income, and the council also benefits very much from rental income from commercial assets. I was somewhat surprised that in the risk analysis there wasn't any reference to risks of non-payment of rent. We know that there is a real issue of commercial tenants not necessarily being able to pay rent at the moment, and it's very difficult to forfeit leases at the moment. I would just be interested to know whether that is a potential risk factor going forward. I note the moratorium on being able to forfeit leases has not been, there's no date in which it comes to an end, so I'll be interested to know what the views are on that. On a second point about risk, turning to paragraph 7.3, I'm somewhat nervous about this idea about the council perhaps being placed behind the pecking order when it comes to security. I understand that in order to be appealing, quite often external lenders may need to rank higher up in the charges register. I just wonder what might happen in the event of a default on any loan that's paid, not enough equity in the asset to pay off whatever has been lent, and in turn taxpayer money being at risk. I would have thought there would be a reputational risk there. I'm just surprised that that hasn't been identified in the risk analysis. I wonder whether that has been considered. My next point on risk is paragraphs 5.6 and 5.11. 5.6 makes reference to adequate security, and 5.11 makes reference to sufficient security. Suitable security. I just wanted to know whether there was whether the use of suitable and adequate was deliberate, or whether they mean different things for the purposes of this document. Just turning now to the structure and HR comments or questions. I'll be interested, I'm new to this, so sorry if this is a really obvious question, but what is the role of Epping Forest directors and the role they play on the Qualis board? I'd be really interested to know that. And the final question is in relation to paragraph 4.13 and 4.17. I understand that there are currently vacancies in the asset management team. And from what I understand from 4.17, it could take up to 14 months to fill those vacancies. It seems like a long time to me. I just wanted to know if there was a reason for a period of 14 months before vacancies are filled in the asset management team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quite a number of questions there. Councillor Phillip, if you're going first on these.
Thank you. Yes, let me take some of those because they were primarily questions around the report from the council. I'll let Sasha talk in more detail about some of the generic risks. I think it's important at this stage to look at the rent risks in two chunks. One is the council has an asset portfolio. We have rent risks on that. It hasn't obviously done as well in the past 12 months as it did in the time before that. That's one of the things that we are looking at going forward. That is not part of what we're looking at the moment because that's going to be part of the work done by the asset management team to see whether doing it through Qualis will be a beneficial thing. I'll let Sasha or perhaps Nick talk about their particular 30 million. I'll come back to that in a minute. There is definitely a reputational risk from the council point of view, as I've said. And I think I said it probably when we were talking about Qualis previously at either council or overview and scrutiny. In a lot of people's minds, it's very difficult to separate Qualis and the council, and therefore we have to recognise that things that Qualis do can have an impact on the council. But it's also important to recognise that Qualis is separate from the council and must be allowed to work as a normal developer, not as an arm of the council. That's not why we set up Qualis. We set up Qualis to be separate, and therefore it needs to work separately. In terms of the security and suitable and adequate, I suspect that Mr. Small was trying to write a good report and not use repeated words frequently. From my point of view, whenever we take this forward, we would need to make sure that we have the right level of security for the level of the loan and the level of the bit of the loan that's been provided at a particular time. Again, coming back to what we were talking about already in terms of reputational risk. In terms of the Qualis board, we set up the Qualis board last year. We appointed both independent directors and the chairman of the board. We appointed 2 councillors to represent the council. It's really important that we have a good working relationship between the senior management team of the council and the Qualis board, and that's why we seconded Sasha into the role for 2 years from a role in the council. It is a question that I do continually look at, is whether the balance is right, and it's at some point in the future we will look to change the makeup of the board. That's not at this precise point, but it may come in the coming year or 18 months. And in terms of the 14 months, it's seconding staff to Qualis for the purposes of doing the work that's been called out in terms of doing that business case for transfer of asset management. It's not down to saying we're going to take 14 months to fill those roles. I would expect Qualis will be filling those roles as suits them in that period of time, because unless we've got an appropriate level of resource and expertise in that, we're not going to come back with a good business plan, and we need to have a good grasp of the various aspects that we need to have to take this forward. And some of that work will be looking at things like title for some of the property that we've got in our assets, to see whether that's something that can move or needs to be staying where it is. Sasha, do you want to add anything?
Actually, I'm going to ask, Nick Dorr wants to add some comments on the loan question.
So to answer your specific things, Qualis has secured 2 and is in the process of securing the third asset. They're low-risk assets, so part of the due diligence process is making sure the covenant behind the income is good, the payment history is good, and also we look to see whether the properties that are being purchased are going to perform well on an open market in terms of if the worst eventuality happens. So it's a very conservative portfolio approach to those. So it's quite defensive, very, very low risk, but we are mindful of that risk. In terms of securitisation, there's a point that you covered. The shareholder agreement and what sits behind the loans, and Councillor Phillips and Andrew Small can confirm that, is heavy and first securitisation of the loans to the authority. We're yet to strike any loans with third-party commercial investors. Our plan is to link those more with specific asset purchases, effectively to ring-fence them, but we haven't done that yet, but that is our intention.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Just on the, slightly on the... Oh. Mr. Daw?
The 30 million.
Yeah. In terms of the rent risk on the 30 million, are you? Yeah. Again, very low. Part of the checking out before we purchase is the normal due diligence you would do in terms of the duration of the lease agreements, the break clauses, the upward only adjustments. We look at all of that. We also make sure that the covenant of the companies that are the renters is good. We do D&B checks and equivalent. We look for a restructuring. Now, we can't have a total clarity of obviously what the future can bring, but everything is around minimising risk.
Thank you very much. Can I just throw in something along, following on from that in a sense? Is there any feeling that Qualis is becoming overly ambitious in its growth plans and taking things forward just a bit too quickly?
Chairman, I think I'm probably the right one to answer that rather than Qualis. We've gone through quite a lengthy process looking at this 4-year business plan, and it's when we first started talking to Qualis about the 4-year business plan, there was a number of different levels of ambition that they had within their potential 4-year business plans. There needs to be sufficient ambition to make sure that they're actually returning to us what we need to be returned, but we did wind back some of the more ambitious parts that were being looked at. So I think where we've got to is a good balance between being under-ambitious and then failing to deliver back to the council because Qualis has not taken on enough, and perhaps the council as a shareholder acting as a balance to say that degree of ambition carries with it more degree of risk than we're comfortable with at this stage. Clearly, as Qualis, I was going to say matures is not the right word, but as it develops more of a track record in being successful through its activities and its development, then we as a council may find that we've an appetite for a slightly more ambitious look at it. But again, it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning, the 4-year business plan will keep coming back. We'll see changes in it. If what we see out of the coming 18 months is that Qualis has been over-ambitious, then we'll need to scale it back in the future. If it shows that we're doing what we say we're doing, then we're on a good track. And it may be that a period after that we will say, let's see if we can get a bit more ambitious, do a bit more. But it's taking sensible steps at the right time. And I think what we've got here is a good balance between being too cautious and being too ambitious.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wixley? Councillor Wixley.
There's a cough at a critical moment, so I missed that. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions there, sort of specific questions, one general question, because I'm particularly interested in the Pearls Lane site and what happens there, as it's in my ward. So I'm looking at the figures on page 55, and there's a figure against land for £1,600,000. I'm assuming that's an estimated purchase price from the council. But I'm mindful that at the last meeting, I think waiting for a valuation of the land from Savills, which wasn't due to come into effect until tomorrow, 2nd of July, because I did view the webcast before I came out. So I just wondered if we could have some clarification on the purchase price, if possible. And I was quite intrigued. There's another figure here for fees, 800,499. It gets right down to 499. So I just I thought you might have gone to 500, but it's that detailed. So I just am quite curious about it. It seems quite a big figure anyway, but to get it down to 499 at the end is quite intriguing. And in a more general question, Mr. Daw mentioned borrowing more money from Qualis, I think, at the end of your presentation, if I got it correct. And I just wondered if you could supply more details on that, please.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Phillip is coming in first.
Yeah, I'm going to come in first and take Pearls Lane. We spent a long time in Pearls Lane at a very recent overview and scrutiny. It's very clear that that was an initial view. The whole business plan, including valuation, will come back to council when we to cabinet when we talk about doing it. So, the business plan for this agenda, as you know, had to be produced in time for the agenda, which is a couple of weeks ago. Let's wait for the whole business plan, because just taking a valuation in isolation will not necessarily give you the right view. So we'll park that one. That's not something that is part of the business plan. So we're looking at doing that. And in terms of the general question at the end, there's quite a lot of detail, both in the covering report and in the business plan itself, about the loans that will be required, when they'll be required, and what they're required for. Clearly, at this stage of Qualis's growth, they have not a great deal of equity to build on top of. We've talked already about the 30 million that they've invested, but that's secured against our loans. So at the moment, they need to have loans to allow them to do the other pieces of work that are highlighted in the business plan. And that comes back into what was asked previously in terms of retaining the profits rather than paying a dividend. That's what will allow them to stop being so reliant on loans going forward. But in terms of the detail of the two questions, I think I'll leave it to Mr. Daw or Sasha.
Mr. Daw?
So in terms of your specific question around future projects, if you look obviously at the development list, there are two specific projects which we highlight. One obviously Pearls Lane, because that was not in the original set, and I think a colleague will answer more details around that. And one is Cottis Phase 2, which, if you remember, currently the plan is for building the car park initially, but there is other areas to develop there. The other two projects are known. They're regenerative projects, but because they're commercially sensitive, I cannot go into more details, other than they're subject to detailed evaluation, phased evaluation, outline business cases, full business cases. They need to have a satisfactory return. They need to be regenerative schemes.
It's probably worth just pointing out for the members of Overview and Scrutiny, in terms of the Council's ability to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board. We can't do it for speculative gain, but we can borrow when it's to do with regenerating places within our district. And that's why the focus around what we're asking Qualis to look at here is how can they help us regenerate our area, our district. And it ties into what I was talking about last time in terms of the improvement of town centres. It's another string in the bow for what we're dealing with here. So that's why Qualis is talking about regeneration, because the drive for this is actually to help regenerate different parts of our district.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Given the close working relationship between this council and Qualis, I wondered if there was any intention over the 4-year period of this business plan to expose not necessarily Qualis as an organisation, but various of its activities to third-party external scrutiny. Quite simply because obviously there is a close working relationship, and there will be a lot of people, I think, looking for issues about Qualis and the council. And in my experience, it's worked very well to get that independent external scrutiny, because it really does silence any detractors.
Councillor Phillip?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I've already touched on scrutiny where things that Qualis is doing to deliver for the council can be scrutinised in terms we talked about the housing repairs, talked about voids. We do have to remember, though, that Qualis is an independent company. We are the shareholder, but it is a company that needs the ability to work in a way that is suitable for working in the world of business, much in the same way as we don't call BIFA in on a regular basis to scrutinise around our waste collection. That's a similar sort of relationship. They are critical to us being able to deliver our services to our residents, and where that overlaps with what the council's doing, we can easily cover that through reports. I think the challenge for us with Qualis is making sure that we make the outward-facing things clear and obvious and subject to scrutiny, and that's clearly going to be part of the going forward, because, as I said, every year we will see the 4-year business plan and the 1-year business plan for the following period of time. That gives great scrutiny of Qualis and its relationship with the council, and clearly if things come out that require further scrutiny, then that will be covered as well.
Thank you very much. Sasha, do you want to give us something from Qualis' side?
I just wanted to add that the council has recently audited Qualis and provided a substantial assurance audit on the governance and the setup of Qualis, so I think that should provide the shareholder with some reassurance. We also obviously have our audit programme within Qualis as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I don't see anybody else indicating. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question was related to the risk analysis, and I think Councillor Phillip has actually dealt with some of the issues, because it was about the Public Works Loan Board and the funding. It's also talking in paragraph 7.3 about the significant risks associated with Qualis as a new company and not having any evidence of equity or no security. So I'm just wondering about how this is going to be tracked. And how we can be given confidence that this will deliver what is said it's going to deliver, but that we can keep on it, or if we're not seeing regular reports back, that Qualis have a process in place to actually track the returns. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Phillip?
Yes, and thank you for that, Councillor Lyon. Yeah, there is clearly a risk with a new company, as there is with all new companies. However, as you well know, we do get regular quarterly reports from Qualis, which come, I believe, to this committee or one of its subsidiary committees. Clearly, any borrowing from the marketplace would be well flagged up in those quarterly reports. It's covered in the 4-year business plan in terms of what myself with the Section 151 officer would be looking at before we say, yes, that's an appropriate borrowing to make for Qualis to make. There is obviously a concern, and I think Qualis would probably echo this, that there's a concern about whether they will be able to borrow at an appropriate level from the market. That's something that we need to make sure is done properly. The encouraging part in the 4-year business plan is that they're actually starting small in terms of a business, a building and development company like this, in terms of loans from the marketplace. The key is making sure that, and it comes back to what we were talking about before in terms of ambition and level of ambition. We encourage strongly Qualis not to be too ambitious that require too much of a debt burden. Have we got it right? Time will tell. But it is a good balance between what we're doing and what Qualis are doing. And I think coming back to the bit about the Public Works Loan Board again, clearly if we can make use of the Public Works Loan Board and Qualis to actually regenerate parts of our district, that is a very positive message to have, and we'll take that over time. the key thing, I think, is not to overload Qualis at this stage with trying to do too much and too many different things in too many different areas. And you'll see that in the business plan. It is quite tightly constrained to things that we would expect a company like that to be doing. That helps to reduce any risk as well, and it also gets something back for the district going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. Having looked at many four-year plans over many years, I take on board your early point that the actual detail will change year by year by year, and quite often the end figures come out exactly the same, but the actual detail behind it changes dramatically. I just have a general point going through all of the papers, and I find it very comprehensive. Is there a mechanism for members to comment on possible schemes or comment on schemes that Qualis are starting to look at? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. That's very useful. And yes, in my business life, I have been known to say things like, for as long as we can possibly tell, which in the IT business might be a horizon of 2 years if we're lucky. It's usually couched also with I have no idea whether I'll still be there in 2 years' time, but I think that's probably true for all of us, particularly in these time frames. I think if there are particular areas that you would like us to be looking at, come to me as the Qualis representative. On the client side, Qualis will look at things when we as a council ask them to look at things. We need to make sure that the things that we're asking are sensible, and that we don't suddenly say, here's 15 sites in the district that we would like you to regenerate. That comes under what I was saying before, which is not putting too much on Qualis in one go. So we need to do it in a sensible way. If you've got suggestions about places you think that might be a good idea, I meet with Sasha every week. We've got a good communication going on there. We can point out things to look at. It may well be that Qualis would take that, look at it and say, not touching that with a barge pole. And that's a perfectly reasonable response to it. If we're further on in Qualis moving things forward, once they've passed a commercially sensitive point of view, and if it comes to planning, then it's normal rules apply. And we do have, Qualis are owned by the council, so if we want to make suggestions, let's make them, and I'm sure, speaking for Sasha, she'd be perfectly happy to hear contributions from councillors if they think there's something that they would like, that they think would be a good fit with Qualis's core business and with the council to do things for our residents.
Thank you very much for that. I don't see any other questions. Can I just ask one final thing? On page 43, under the organisational structure, it talks about we're currently reviewing the organisational structure. You started off, obviously, with the parent company and 3 subsidiaries. You've added one already. Along with the reviewing, is there any thoughts or, I'm not suggesting you should, but setting up any further companies within the Qualis Group?
I'm actually going to ask Paul Hewitt to answer that question, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem at all. There are no plans to add additional companies at the moment in the structure. We've got, as some of you have noted, we've got quite an ambitious plan over the next 4 years. What I'm referring to when I've mentioned restructuring, we've realised that the activities of Qualis Living and Qualis Commercial are in many cases overlapping and quite complementary, in fact. So what we are looking at with external advice is whether we can fully combine those two companies, which will drive efficiency and reduce our need for additional resources in terms of people, and hopefully we'll see some operational benefits as well from that restructure, if it is right for us after taking external advice.
Thank you very much for that.
I probably should add actually that any change to the structure of the organisation is a reserved matter, so obviously we would put any recommendations or we would be seeking shareholder approval before anything like that were to move forward.
Thank you very much. Right, I think that has covered quite a lot of ground in that. I know that we've got quite a number of Cabinet members here this evening who I'm sure have taken on board the various points that have been raised this evening. When this report comes to Cabinet, I believe I'm going to say 12th of July. So, and I'm sure if any other members have other questions or queries or thoughts that rise between now and then, they can attend the Cabinet meeting and raise them at that time as well. So thank you very much. We now move on to the item on the item 9 on the agenda, the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report. We have seen this a couple of times so far. It is just coming to us now in its final form, apart from the front page, which we didn't feel gave a real overview of I used the word send the right message, didn't quite send the right message. So that is being replaced by just the council's logo, the use of the deers and the forest. But other than that, the report is, as I say, has been here at least 2 times before. It's to get agreement for it to be submitted to the full council on the 29th of July. But if there's any comment, again, that anybody wants to make, I'm not seeing any indication. So are members happy to agree that this report now be submitted to full council? Thank you very much. We now come on to item 10 on the agenda, which is the yellow that you will have had in front of you. I have a yellow. White, sorry. Okay. It's the Cabinet business to review the Executive's current programme of key decisions and to identify any appropriate matters for overview and scrutiny work programme, and also overview of the specific decisions proposed to be taken over the period of time. We've got several Cabinet members here this evening. If I just take this through in the usual way that we go through the work programme as set out from page 9 on the document.
Chairman, could I just ask a general question first?
Yes, sorry.
We got the email saying that this had been tabled sometime today, didn't we? And I just wondered, because when I then looked at the, what's the name of the app? The ModGov app, I couldn't access it. So I just wondered, as a general rule, what's the time delay between getting the email that this is being tabled? Because I don't always seem to be able to open the link, I have to say, from an email, but I can open ModGov. What's the normal time delay between receiving notification via email and it going on to the app ModGov? Because when I looked immediately after receiving the email, it wasn't there.
I understand your question around that. Personally, I usually go to something like this that comes in late via the link within the email itself rather than going through ModGov, but certainly the expectation I would have thought would be that it should be on ModGov. Obviously, this is a particularly late edition again because it's a work programme that begins from the 1st of July, which is today, which is why it's such a late document. But I'm just looking to see if an officer can...
Is it almost immediate, or is there a 10 or 15-minute delay?
Mr. Swan?
I would have thought it was almost instantaneous, Chairman.
Right. Okay.
I was just a bit too quick. Okay, thanks.
Right, okay, thank you very much. So going through the work programme, page 9, anything on the leaders' portfolio? Councillor Lyon?
Before we get to that, I just wonder whether there's a typo on the dates. It says this is Corporate Aims and Objectives 2019-2020.
Which page are you on?
I'm on page 4, or page 6, sorry.
That might be a typo. Again, looking at officers.
Because it also follows through on Cabinet membership. And a general question about the fact that some of the portfolio holders' programmes are blank, but we get to that.
Yes, I mean, that tends to be the case that we quite often have. Perhaps have more blank ones on this particular document, but there usually are 1 or 2 that are blank. Mr. Woodall?
Yes, Chairman, apologies to members, that is a typo. We'll change that for the next edition.
So it should read 21, 22. Thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
Yes, I've managed to have a quick look at this before the start of the meeting. On page 9, I'd like to ask the leader whether he wants to use this as an opportunity to give us a verbal update about the civic accommodation in terms of where we are with agreements with the community partners, and are we any nearer to members being able to have a little look. I did use the opportunity of the toilet break to have a little unofficial look at the next meeting, but that wasn't unofficial.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitbread.
I'm glad you got an unofficial look, Councillor Murray. We're organising the visits for members at the moment. We're getting that organised. They're also organising the official opening ceremony, which will be be later in the civic calendar. And of course, there's lots of work ongoing with potential partners, some which I'm involved with, and obviously others which are more commercial. So there's lots going on. I hope to bring a proper report shortly, Councillor Murray, but it's important to come with full facts rather than half facts.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments on the leaders' items? No. On page 10, planning and sustainability, the Councillor Bedford, who isn't able to be here this evening, but I'm sure another cabinet member could take anything if there's any questions. No. Page 11, finance, Qualis, client and economic development. Obviously, we've already had quite a good discussion around the 4-year business plan, but any other queries around that particular item? Councillor Lyon.
Sorry, Chairman, just going back to page 10, sorry I'm a bit slow. On the implementation of the local plan, some of the supplementary issues, things like electric charging, is that going to be covered under that item, or is that a separate issue? Is there going to be a work programme looking at sustainable transport? You've got transport strategy, but is it sustainable transport, electric charging, electric vehicles, that sort of thing? Is that going to be covered in that particular area, or is it somewhere else?
Chairman,
Yes,
perhaps I can help
Councillor
you.
Phillip, you can take that.
In that, what this is these are the key decisions that are made, and we're bringing an update on the progress of the local plan, and that should be no different and no surprise to any councillor who all have read the previous ones. Clearly, we have work ongoing in terms of sustainable transport. The other item on here is the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town Transport Strategy, which is key to being able to make that a garden town. So that is important. And I will take the opportunity to bang on about policies in the local plan. And we have stuff around electric charging points and sustainable transport within the local plan, which is already there, which will shortly be coming out for main modifications consultation.
Okay, thank you. So I think I haven't seen any indication on anything on page 11. Page 12, environmental and technical services. Councillor Avey again. I'm sure if there are any questions, somebody else could take them, or any queries. No. And housing services. Again, quite a detailed and long work programme around that one. Seems to be the pattern, the norm for that. Unfortunately, Councillor Holly Whitbread isn't here this evening, but I'm sure there will be somebody who might be able to answer anything. Councillor Murray.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Particularly as I can be quite critical occasionally, not of officers, but of political leadership. I always like to say nice things when I can. And this isn't of political leadership, actually. This is of officers. Following, and I mean, I don't think it's because I made the points, but I probably got the email because I made the points. Following the comments I made at the last meeting as regards the importance of scrutiny on all those housing issues and my numbers seem to be different from yours. I'm looking at page 11 and 12, but it's clearly housing. I got a really detailed email from Jennifer Gould outlining the timeline for scrutiny and consultation on the allocation scheme, the tenancy policy review, the housing strategy review and homelessness, and the rough sleeping strategy review, which I found incredibly useful. And I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that she had responded and given me a very detailed report and timeline for the consultations and scrutiny in those areas. So thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments, Councillor Murray. I'm not seeing any other indication. There's nothing on the work programme for customers and partnerships. Community and regulatory services, I believe that's Councillor Patel. Any questions on that one? I just wondered around the question to adopt the proposed fit and proper person determination policy. Can you give us anything on that, Councillor Patel? The meaning behind it.
Essentially, in order to be a fit and proper person to manage a caravan site, you have to go through a particular procedure. There's certain criteria that needs to be followed, and essentially the report that's coming forward is the review of that and what checks we need to be putting in place to authorise someone to manage these sites.
So the bottom line is it's a reference to the management of the site and
Absolutely.
the manager who is in place on any particular
Yes.
site. Right, thank you very much for that. Anything else from anybody? And that brings us to the end of the work programmes. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee work programme is on page 127 to 130. Mr Woodhall, do you just want to run through that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you say, the work programme for the committee starts on page 127. We have 3 standing items at the moment throughout this year. The review of cabinet business, which we've just done, the group company structure, and we've had the 4-year report about Qualis tonight, and also COVID-19 response and recovery. The items listed for the 3rd of June, I believe we got through. I wasn't at the 8th of June meeting, but looking at the minutes, I think they were all dealt with. And the 2 items listed for tonight's meeting have also been dealt with. If we look further forward, at the moment, there's the possibility that there will be a report on resuming the local high streets task and finish panel at the next meeting, along with some corporate plan performance reports. And we have further reports then for the November, January and March meetings. What we haven't got at the moment is any external scrutiny. If any members have any ideas on any external organisations they would like to invite to future meetings, then please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray?
Yeah, I've got one comment on this, and maybe it's what normally happens, but it just surprised me. On page 129, number 19, election planning's progress report, it just surprised me that something as detailed as that would come to overview and scrutiny, and I just thought it would be better going to Stronger Council. If you look at Stronger Council on page 135 and 136, they actually carry out the review of the previous elections. If it's something that's come to us before as a main committee, but I can't remember it coming to ONS, it just seemed an odd thing to come to the whole of ONS. Elections planning progress report for the elections in 22, but if other members are happy for it to come, but I just think it's better going straight to the select committee. But
Mr Woodhall, can you update us on whether or not it is something that always comes here, or is it normally would have gone to a select committee?
I'd have to check on previous years. I think we did submit a report to this committee last March about the planning for the elections that happened in May. But it's entirely up to members. If members feel this item is better going to Stronger Council, then it can be moved there. It's up to members. I mean, it may well have been that it came here last year because we were in unusual circumstances. Sorry, yes, for this year's elections we were in unusual circumstances, so it could well have been that it came here because of that. Perhaps, Mr Woodhall, if you could just check back and see what has happened in the past. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I'm going to go to the stake over, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rackham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to mention item 13, the local high streets task and finish panel. I think it would be brilliant if we could bring that back. It was so beneficial before COVID-19, and I think it'll be even more beneficial after COVID-19. So if we could really push to have that back, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
And the way in which this is put forward, it is something that we can make a final decision on at the September meeting. But yes, that's certainly something that has been quite pushed by a number of members, that it should be reinstated and or at least picked up again. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. At the last meeting, we had the Town Centre Regeneration Project come to us for pre-scrutiny. It seems appropriate that that comes back at a periodically. I don't know whether the task and finish panel is a place for that to go, but I think that that ought to come to us to keep an eye isn't the right word really, but just to see how it's progressing, and so other members have an opportunity beyond the little steering group to have some sort of input.
Certainly, I wouldn't have thought it sat with the task and finish panel, because I think their role is slightly different than the bigger picture that the regeneration, and it's focusing on specific areas of the district.
I don't mind where it comes, Chairman, but I think we just need to have it coming back.
It certainly is something that I'm assuming it's not proposed that it goes to any of the select committees.
Chairman, I will be reporting on the progress of the town centre work and changes that we make as we go along, bringing that to Cabinet. If we get to a point where it's appropriate, there's enough content for somebody to review at Overview and Scrutiny or one of its select panels, I'll talk to you as Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny so that we can decide where the right place to bring it is. At the moment, we're just kicking off. We've done some work on Waltham Abbey. We've started stuff in Ongar. The other ones are still not really kicked off yet. And quite frankly, at the moment, I don't think there's anything that would be worth spending your time scrutinising. When it gets to the point where it is, then I will let you know.
Thank you very much. And I think that it makes sense that we pick it up as and when there is something that we can really discuss and look at in detail. So, Councillor Whitehouse, are you happy with that approach?
Yes, I think Councillor Phillip was saying he's going to Cabinet and then we can ask for it to come. Is that what he said? It's not very easy to hear.
Yeah. I think Councillor Phillip will talk to myself as and when he thinks there is something that can come onto the agenda. Thank you very much. Don't see anything else on that. And as Mr Woodhall has said, if there are any external organisations, groups that members do think might be worthy of asking if they will come to this committee sometime within the year, then either myself or Mr Woodhall, if you can contact them. Councillor Murray.
As this is a public meeting, I will mention this because I did think seriously about putting in the paper, but it is only part of the district, so I didn't think it was reasonable. But my part of the district, the way Thames Water are operating at the moment, needs someone to give them really good scrutiny, because they've made life in our largest town absolutely impossible over the last 6 months, and they just a complete law to themselves. But I didn't, because it's partial and doesn't cover the whole of the district, I didn't think it was probably reasonable for to ONS to scrutinise. But I'm really just using this as an opportunity at a public council meeting just to put on record the real anger in our town. I mean, there were times because of their work or lack of work that there was only one way in and one way out, which is just not acceptable.
Thank you for those comments, and certainly we have had, I think probably Thames Water previously at one of the, if not, it was prior to select committees, but the previous committees of Overview and Scrutiny, we did have one of the utilities, and I'm pretty certain it was Thames Water. So there is precedence to having invited them in previously. Councillor Wixley.
Well, I would support what Councillor Marrish just said. It did occur to me myself that that might be a possibility to get them along, but I did feel the same, that it's Thames Water don't cover the whole of the district, so I wasn't sure if that would be acceptable. But the situation is quite awful at times, I'm afraid. They dig a hole, do the work, go away, come back, dig a hole again, and it just goes on like that. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was certainly something to take note of, and obviously it'll be referenced in the minutes, so we can come back to it if it is one that people feel would be an organisation to come forward. Going on to the select committee's work programmes, we've got the work programme for the communities and for Stronger Council. We seem to have last year's work programme for Stronger Place still on the... But, Councillor Murray.
I just wanted to share this reflection on the Stronger Community Select Committee, because I don't know whether other people agreed with me who were members or who were attending, but I thought it was fantastic. We had the new chairman, Councillor Lee, in the job. She spent the whole time telling us that she couldn't really do the job and that she wasn't very confident, and she did an outstanding job. It was just really, it was lovely. And we told her at the end how well she had done, but she definitely tried to talk herself out of it, but no, she did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you for making that recognition of what she did do at that meeting. Councillor Lyon.
Yes, on the Place Select Committee, you're quite right. It is last year's programme. There hasn't been a programme agreed previously, as far as I'm concerned, or given to me. So the first meeting we did have a verbal report on the main modifications, but we spent some time reviewing what members would like to see in the programme so that we can scrutinise input. And one of the things that I've asked for is a copy of some of the business plans so we can actually look what the commitments have been made by the directorates. And there's a number of documents that I've been looking at and we're sharing amongst the committee. So it's the corporate plan from 2018 to 2023 as a baseline, the local plan submission version with the main modifications, departmental business plans, corporate aims and objectives, which we've seen here, and the Cabinet Work Programme. So that's the starting point for actually putting together a work programme. So, you know, being the first meeting and being a number of members fairly new, that's where we started from. So it will take us some time to get this lot together, but it's being actively worked on, and hopefully with the help of Mr. Dorr, who was there and has come up with some interesting suggestions, we will make some progress before our next meeting. Thank you,
very
Chairman.
much. I've got Councillor Whitehouse and then Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. The Green Action Plan used to come regularly to Neighbourhood Scrutiny Committee, and I think that would be, you know, should be coming back to one of the select committees. I don't know which one it would be, but I know you're going to be discussing that, you know, fairly shortly. But that was a very interesting piece of work for members to, you know, be kept in touch with and to contribute to.
Sorry, I missed which action
The Green
plan?
Action Plan
The
used to
Green
come to
Action
the
Plan.
Neighbourhood Scrutiny Committee.
Yeah. And that is something to take forward at the next meeting of the... yeah. Did you reference a particular select committee or just one of them?
I think probably it's Place, but Place is overloaded with items and others are very short, so hopefully there'll be a bit of redistribution.
Well, it's something, perhaps we've got a meeting of the joint chairman and vice chairman of the committees coming up later this month, so perhaps we can look at it at that point as well to see where it can be fitted in. Obviously Councillor Lee isn't here, but Councillor Bolton, have you got any comments on your committee?
Nothing specific except to point out that the review of local elections is on our work programme, so it doesn't need to come to the main overview and scrutiny. We have discussed it in the past. Also to comment that I've noticed pre-scrutiny is beginning to subtly work in our committee, in that people are presenting issues which we're then discussing before then going to Cabinet. Previously, that didn't seem to work that well, but I think, let's see, there's agreement from some members here that that's happening, and we would encourage that and hope it works.
the timetabling is working
Yes,
better than
yes,
it
yes.
did in the past.
It goes in smoothly. Yeah.
Councillor Murray, sorry, I missed coming back.
No, no, that's fine, because it fits in quite nicely, the comment I want to make about the stronger council, because the chairman highlighted something and then you talked about timetable and timing. I do look at the scrutiny really carefully, because I think the scrutiny function is really important. And I was just a little bit surprised, and it's obviously too late to change, and I know it's probably to do with timescales or the amount of items on individual agendas, but I was just a little surprised that the elections were held on May the 6th, and the review of them is until the September meeting. I kind of had in my own mind, without reading the paperwork, it would obviously go to the meeting at the end of July, because, to my way of thinking, you've got May to kind of tidy up the elections, which is an horrendous tidying up process, I would think. And I don't mean sweeping the floor with a hanger, you know what I mean, all the administrative stuff. But then you've got the whole of June and effectively the whole of July, though there were probably internal deadlines for the agenda, I suppose. It just seemed a little late to me to carry out the review of the local elections in September when they were held in early May, and why isn't it in July? But that might be because there's a consultation process. I know they've consulted with all, or given the opportunity of all the candidates at parish, district and county. Can't be at a level this time. I don't know whether we asked the police commissioner candidates whether they had a view. So I know we've done that, but I mean, it's just a comment. But again, I don't feel, you know, desperately strongly. But I think I personally would have preferred it to be at the July meeting rather than the September meeting.
Thank you for those comments. I might be wrong in this, but my understanding is that there is an officer election working group or some committee that meets, I mean, whether that's partly judges a timetable, but Mr. Small, Mr. Woodhall?
Just to say that I know it's actively being worked on at the moment. If it's possible to bring it to the July meeting, then we'll do so, but I suspect it will probably be September now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Haven't got anything else on the select committees? I don't think that no reason to exclude public and press, so I close the meeting at nearly 9:20. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for your attendance and contributions. Thank you.